I have 5 secrets to having a powerful mindset against narcissists. Well, then stay tuned because I'm going to give them to you. Hey there. So I'm Rebecca Zung. I am an attorney. I am a narcissist negotiation expert, and I'm an author. And in these videos and on this channel, I give you powerful tips, tricks, and resources on how to shift the dynamic and feel strong, powerful, and amazing so that you can negotiate against narcissists and also feel like you can be the most powerful person in any room when you are dealing with the most difficult and most toxic personalities on the planet. And if that sounds good to you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. So let's talk about how to have a powerful mindset against narcissists, because honestly, when you're negotiating with them or when you're dealing with them or managing them or trying to deal with any kind of difficult personalities, that's like the most difficult thing. I get a lot of correspondence from people, and some of the most satisfying correspondence that I get from people is when people are like, okay, I won my negotiation, I got the results that I wanted, but the most surprising thing that happened to me is that my fear disappeared. But that's actually the most important thing that happens, because you cannot get the results you want, and you cannot manage difficult people or toxic personalities without that. And that's actually the thing that you have to lead with, because they smell blood in the water, and that's why they know that they can kind of target you and know that they can control you, because they look for people who are empaths. They look for people who are kind of the bleeding hearts, who have some sort of, wounds themselves, who have some sort of, really want to help people, who really feel like I can save you, I can help you. And to them, that doesn't mean, oh, I can help you, I can save you, I can. To them, that means, ooh, sap. To them, that means, I can take advantage of you. You think, oh, they're going to appreciate me. They're going to, wow, this person saved me. They're going to love me for it. They're going to see all that I did for them. And that ain't going to happen. It's going to end up being a black hole. You're going to end up feeling used. You're going to end up feeling abused. It's going to end up being this cycle where you're going to give, give, give. They're going to take, 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 and it's going to keep going, going, going. And here's like the really kind of thing that's also sort of ironic is, like, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I'm afraid to like become strong against the narcissist because I'm afraid of the backlash. I'm afraid of the things that they're going to do to me. I'm afraid of like what's going to happen because they're going to be worse." Well, yeah, they probably will be worse initially, because you've conditioned them, they've conditioned you, you've kind of conditioned each other in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of times you have a long history with each other, and that you've both kind of created a conditioning of each other. I mean, you've both sort of taught each other what you will tolerate or how the relationship is going to go. And there's been some expectations that have been set on both sides as a result. And so creating a powerful mindset means you're also going to have to create some new boundaries, new goals, new way of thinking for yourself as well. So, all right. So number 5, I'm going to kind of work backwards with your secrets here. 5 secrets to having a powerful mindset against narcissists. So that's kind of like my preface to the whole thing here. But let's work backwards with our secrets. So number 5 is start expecting them to behave like narcissists. I know that sounds easy, but it's not all that easy sometimes. I mean, you can still end up in the trap of like, can you believe they did this? I can't believe they did that. Oh my gosh. I mean, I remember having this conversation with a client one time where she had this huge situation with her soon to be ex in the parking lot of the school. And it was like 8 o'clock, 8:30, and she calls me at my office and she was like, can you believe he did this right in front of the students, in front of the teachers? Everybody was there. And I remember saying to her, because she kept saying, can you believe he did? Can you believe? Can you believe? And I remember saying, yes, I can, especially after all you've told me about him. What I can't believe is that you can't believe it. She actually started laughing because she was like, good point. Fair points. Like, yeah, because like, just, yeah, don't be surprised when they act like themselves, right? They just expect them. There they go. There they are acting like their narky selves. Don't be surprised when they just act like themselves. So that's secret number 5. So now we're going to go to secret number 4. Secret number 4 is to be super specific about what it is that you want. So having a powerful mindset means, what is it that you want? Do you want a certain outcome? Do you want a certain vision? What is the goal of, the negotiation that you want? Is it, a certain parenting plan? If it's a business negotiation, what is the outcome? Sometimes people forget that. It seems so simple, but people often forget. Is it, if you're trying to end a business relationship, even if it's not a negotiation, what would be your perfect outcome? Is it to just go your own separate ways? Do you want to keep the business? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to dissolve it? What is it that you want? Do you want to keep the clients? Do you not? Be super specific. Write it down. Maybe write it down and post it everywhere. What goals do you want for your life, for your business, for your career? Watch my interview with Bob Proctor, by the way, which is amazing. It not only, by the way, changed lives of many people who watched that interview, it changed my own life. It was like one of my favorite interviews that I've absolutely ever done. So definitely go check that out. So that's secret number 2. Be super specific. You are placing orders to the universe. By the way, you're placing orders to the universe even when you say things you don't necessarily want. So, a lot of people say, I don't have enough money. 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 And I wonder why the universe doesn't bring them more money. Come on, be careful with what you say. Your words are very powerful. So if you want more money, be careful about what you say. Okay. So that's secret number 4. Secret number 3 is stay laser focused and put your emotions into it. See yourself in your outcome. Feel it. Emotion plus motion equals your outcome. Like, really, really feel it. The movie The Secret, they were talking about like feeling yourself in the car, like you feel your hands on the steering wheel, you feel the hair, the wind in your hair, like really feel it. You have to really feel like what it's like. And like, you can't just like write it down on a piece of paper. You got to really, really feel the emotion of what it is that you want, because that vibrational energy is super, super important. Okay, so if you're doing it, give me an I'm doing it in the comments right now. I'm doing it. I feel the power. I got the emotion. All right, number 2, watch your words. No weak language. No, I'm trying, I'm hoping, I might, maybe, I'm sorry. None of that. No weak language, people. No, I'm doing, I am Yoda. We're Yoda here. Remember Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try. Yes. Love Yoda. All right. And secret number one. Secret number one. This is my own little secret. This is for me as well as for you. I got to do this myself too. Number one for myself is I don't leave my thoughts unsupervised. At least for me, my thoughts cannot be left unsupervised. I don't know about you, but I have to, like, if I'm, walking the dog or, doing things where my thoughts are left to their own devices, they don't usually go into the good neighborhoods. They usually end up in the bad neighborhoods. So I usually end up listening to podcasts, books, Audible books, things that will fill my head with the things that I want. So, control your input. That helps to control your output. So that's what I do. Don't leave your thoughts unsupervised. That is secret number one to having a super powerful mindset. So, what I want to go back to is your mindset.
Yeah.
Because so many people are dealing with difficulty, toxic people, and how you've got this unbelievable mindset about being able to visualize what it is that you want and and get what you want. And so I want to have you talk about how to do that, how you do that.
Yeah. How I did it.
How do
So
you
part
manifest
of it.
what you want?
Say that again.
How is it that you manifest what you want, your vision for
Yeah.
yourself in life?
So a couple things. I'm gonna give credit to my martial arts training.
Mm,
Um, I w- I lived and trained in Japan for a period of time under 17th generation samurai bloodline sensei. Um, I've been in the martial arts now for 45 years, which took a lot of it. There's a lot of mental training in the martial arts and understanding focus and understanding that type of thing. And I think that became a foundation of determination for me
mhm,
early on. And and I think I've fallen back to that numerous times. Now, with the cancer in particular, I have a certain belief around the body and its ability to heal when you give it the things that it needs. Um, and that I think that our mind does have an impact on our ability to achieve, our ability to do things, our ability to heal things. And so I I look at I started to become very critical about what was going into my mind at at any given time. Um, and I was intentional about what I was feeding it during the cancer journey itself. So, but if we talk about it generally speaking, I think that we need to stand vigilantly at the gates of our mind. We are fed so much through media, social media, and all the stuff that we're digesting, and we think that it's okay. I'm not saying that I don't watch TV. I do that, but I don't live in that kind of capacity, and I don't want the anything that's going to cause angst or negativity because the bias of it in most cases is viewership ratings and advertisers, and I don't need that. That doesn't make me feel good.
So,
And if I'm not feeling good, if I'm feeling stressed, it's going to cause distress in the system. And so I think that when it comes to achieving anything, we got to ask ourselves, what am I feeding myself?
mhm,
Okay. Now, because if I'm feeding myself junk, then the likelihood of success is going to be it's like soil for a plant. And if I don't have good soil, it's not going to grow and it's not going to grow to its potential. So if I want to achieve something, one, I need to stand vigilantly at the gates of my mind. Two, I think I need to be really clear on what it is I'm trying to achieve.
mhm,
Really clear.
mhm,
Not, I'd like to have more money
mhm,
or I'd like to lose weight. How much specifically and when? be so clear. Even when I was trying to pass, I passed the CPA exam while I was still in college. Okay. And I knew that I had 3 months to pass the exam. So I knew that I had to study for it and prepare. I knew that what I needed to study because I had the study guide. So I literally said, okay, I'm totally focused on the exam. And I broke it down week by week. If these are all the things I need to study, how do I do it over these number of weeks? And when do I do reviews? And I literally listed it out and said, this is what I'm doing for the next 90 days. And I think that we don't do things intentionally. And when you do, you start to find that you make more progress. So a protection of the mind, a clear vision of where I want to go. Now I look at it and say, what if that's where I want to go and I know where I am, what's the gap I need to fill? What's missing? Do I need skills? Do I need mentors? Do I need coaches? Do I need education? Do I need resources? And now I will search those out, get them in place, and then I literally will calendar it. I knew with the cancer, and the cancer came back. So what happened was diagnosed in June, first surgery July, second surgery August, December they said I was okay. April go in for a scope, they found 2 more tumors. It came back. And I spiraled again. And a friend of mine and I were talking. He says, what's the outcome? And I go, what do you mean? He says, do you know what your outcome is? I said, well, I know what I want the outcome to be. He says, they should be one and the same. And I said, okay, I want to beat this thing. Great. If you want to beat this thing and you know that it's going to be a journey, what do you need to do today? Just today, to get you one step closer to beating it? What's the task today? What's the thing to do today? And then when you get to tomorrow, what's the thing you got to do tomorrow? And you just do the one thing each day that you need to do every day until you get to the solution you want. And the fact is that you're going to have to change as you go because you don't know what the day's going to bring. And then he stopped and he says, now, I know we're talking about cancer, but isn't that the way life is anyways? And I go, oh, yeah. And so that's what kind of rebalanced me to say, well, what do I need to do today to beat this? First, I had to get my mind right, commit to it again, see what it was. So that's where I would start with everything. I've always started mind first, vision second, plan third, strategy fourth.
So for those people who are sitting here going, all right, I'm at the effect of a toxic narcissist or whatever, where would I start for an affluence blueprint? What would I do? Where, tell me.
Well, so the question, first question is, are we in a dangerous situation? Because if we're in a dangerous situation, that means that I think that we need to protect ourselves and make sure that we're safe first.
Right, of course.
They're in the medical literature, all of us have heard of this, but there's something called the placebo effect. But on the other side of it, there's also the nocebo effect, which not everybody is as familiar with. But the placebo effect is where, and this was found during one of the world wars, where they ran out of morphine and painkillers for some of the soldiers that had fallen and had injuries. And so one of the doctors just decided, he said, I'm going to start giving people sugar pills. And they felt better. And that really turned him on and realized that, wow, that the power of the mind is unequal to anything. And so this is where you take a sugar pill, there's nothing in it, but people, by the way, when you look at the science, it's unbelievable how often placebo pills were performed equally to the medication people were taking, whether it was for migraine headaches, whether it was for decreasing pain, whether it was actually reversing a medical condition. So the power of belief is incredibly important for healing. And so what I would say is, so the placebo effect, by the way, there's some literature that also shows you can amplify the placebo effect. Let me jump to the nocebo effect first, though. There's a story, an example. This is a case study, a real example of what happened. There was a man who was diagnosed with liver cancer, and they said, you have 3 months to live. He was an oncologist, and he died 3 months later. When they were doing a biopsy, they realized we misdiagnosed him. He didn't have liver cancer. He had a small benign tumor that could have simply been removed on the side of his liver, and he could have lived another 30, 40 years. And so there are a lot of people today who are getting wrong diagnoses, but they believe that they have this issue. And so they actually start to adopt and start to have those conditions. And part of this is something called neuroplasticity, where your body will start to rewire neural pathways in order to make something happen. And 95% of what we do on a daily basis is subconscious. So we're just naturally doing things without even having to think about it. Well, your brain is the same way. If you're telling your body, I believe I'm going to walk again, or I believe I'm going to reverse my hypothyroidism, or I believe I'm going to have my relationship restored, it is much, much more likely that it will happen versus if you're saying to yourself, you know what, we'll never be friends again, or the doctor said I've got to be on that pill the rest of my life and I'll never be able to reverse this. And so I have to. If you believe that, again, as you said, you're right. Versus if you believe the opposite, if you believe that thing, that best outcome for you in your life, it is much, much more likely to happen because your brain subconsciously starts creating nerve pathways in order to send blood flow or nerve signals or things in those areas to help it heal and be restored. The other thing is there's some science that shows there's ways to amplify the power of belief. And what they found in one study was, one, if you were able to visualize your end result, this gave you a better chance of achieving it. And so if you saw yourself, and I did this with my mom who beat cancer naturally. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, given a 40% chance to live. And now, 20 some years later, she's in the best shape of her life, bringing her kids to Disney World. But basically, I said, Mom, you need to picture your perfect future. I said, what does it look like? And my mom was a preschool teacher, so you can imagine, I mean, she loves kids. So she wanted to be a grandma, and she said, I see myself at Disney World, bringing my kids to Disney World, going boating with your dad, and we're a big water family, and going water skiing in my 70s. So I had her visualize, and she saw it really, really clearly. So that's the first thing they found in the study that increases your chance of these neural pathways and neuroplasticity is visualization. The second thing they found was if you can really tie powerful emotions to that vision and that reality you want. And so, for instance, when I was diagnosed with my spinal infection and I wanted to walk again, I saw myself taking my 2-year-old daughter and, like I was before, throwing her up in the air in the pool. And so I visualized that, and then I really felt this emotion of joy, of just laughter and happiness and this sort of enthusiasm. And then I saw myself being passionate for taking what I had learned through the process and helping others. But I really let it well up in me, the sense of just joy and seeing the end result. And then the last thing is, the third thing they found was, if you have a plan, if you can play out in your mind how it's going to happen. So there's vision, there's tapping into the positive emotions. And then it's if you can logically think about and have a plan for, this is how this is going to occur. So for instance, when I had my spinal osteomyelitis, when I had the infection in my bone, I started planning, well, how would I get rid of this? Now, there were things I took for actually a much shortened period of time, an antibiotic for a short period of time. But I also pictured I got in a hyperbaric chamber, and that increases oxygen to help it heal. So I actually saw it and knew that was going to help. And then I started planning out the herbs I would take to have the anti-infection properties, and the diet I would follow. And so I created a plan and followed it. And then it went from visualization to realization, through this process and happened. And so, those are some things I would encourage people to do. If you have any barrier in your life and you need a breakthrough, you really need to start with that process of visualization, tap into those positive emotions, experiencing it in the greatest possible way you can, and then create a plan in order to turn that into reality. And I do get into this in my new book, Think This, Not That. I really lay out and go through, how do you find your identity and purpose? How do you break through these limiting beliefs? But this in particular is really important if somebody's going to experience a breakthrough.
Oh, I just love this so much because I talk about this in the sleigh method as well. I say you have to have a strategy, and the very first thing with
Yes.
your strategy is to have that vision and really know exactly where you want to go. Because so many times when people are dealing with a toxic situation or a toxic person in their life, whether it's in a professional setting or a personal setting, they've been on the defensive for so long that it's just this survival mode, and so they haven't even thought about where is it that they want to go. And even with that, the first thing that they go is, well, I just don't want to have to deal with this anymore. Well, that's not thinking about the ideal. I
Yeah.
go, well, where is it that you really want to be? Like, what do you want? A house by the beach? Do you want to have an ideal partner? Do you want to have like beautiful drapes in the window? Do you want to have like a beautiful body? Do you want to have a really a mate that loves you? Like, I think about the life that you want. Like, not just like I want the person out, right? Like, really
Oh,
think
that's
about
right.
what's that emotion that you're going to feel, like freedom, peace, love, like you have, like you're breathing well, like you're walking your dog, you've got kids, like feel
Yeah.
that happiness, the joy of it. Right. So I love what you're talking about. And I love the fact that you have like a step-by-step guide to this. It's so perfect and in alignment with what I talk about. So talk more about that.
Yeah, so one of the things I do, and this is in chapter 11 in the book. There's 12 chapters, and I really go through this process of what I call visualization to realization. Now, there's a few other steps I want to talk about here that are really important. Actually, before you visualize parts of your life. Now, if you know you need to heal, you can start with visualization. But I will say that I have done some mentorship of a lot of doctors and helping them and become better practitioners, teaching them certain methods, teaching them how to be better business, teaching them how to be better leaders, more compassionate, more loving, grow in their character. And the thing that I always tell them is, because I'll say, hey, what are your goals? And oftentimes they'll share what their big, hairy, audacious goals are. And oftentimes I'll say, you know what? One thing I would do is I would make sure that those things will actually lead to true fulfillment in your life. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go for those things, but I'm saying make sure that you prioritize. Because if your list and your top things, the only thing you're thinking about are, I want a Lamborghini, I want a $10 million home, and I want, you know, like, a lot of money in the bank, whatever it is, it's all finances or fame. I say, I don't think that's going to lead to true fulfillment. And so make sure before you visualize and goal set, make sure you prioritize and you sit down and think about what are the most important things in your life. I'll give you an example of this. I was at my grandfather's funeral about 5 years ago. And my grandfather had an amazing life, lived to be 96 years old.
Mm.
And I was standing there at the funeral, and the pastor leading the service asked everybody. He said, "Does anyone have any last words about Howard?" Howard was my grandfather, amazing World War II veteran, just great guy. And the person next to me cried out, and he said, and just sobbing, a man in his 70s, said, "Howard was my best friend."
Mm.
And I looked over, and I'm a little ashamed to say this, but I looked over, and at first I was like, I wanted to have compassion for him, but also, actually, the first thing that went in my head was, well, you're not my grandfather's best friend. That's my uncle, like someone else. And then I thought, and I looked around the room, and something really hit me. I thought, you know what? Half the people, hundreds of people in this room, half of them probably think my grandfather's their best friend.
Oh.
Because my grandfather was the guy. So at 44 years old, he worked for this company, Ohio Bell, and until he was 44, and he decided, I want to do something different with my life. And so he took his life savings, him and my grandmother, and bought a campground and a lake, and they turned it into a swim park for families, had a big water slides and like all kinds of stuff, and had a campground. And he did that for the next, next however many years, 52 years of his life. Till he
Wow.
was 96 years old. He worked almost until the day he died. But it was really like his ministry. Mother Teresa had her Calcutta. My grandfather had his campground, and he would go back there. And I hate to say, listen, if like my grandfather, he was not on a Forbes 500 magazine. He died with probably, I mean, almost no money to his name at all. Probably because he let so many people come in for free. But he would go back there and he would just care for the people. My grandfather was a person once a week when I was a kid, we would go to the hospital and somebody was there and he would volunteer and go in there and just put his hands on somebody's shoulder or hand and pray for them when they were in the hospital, bring them food. I mean, just an amazing servant. But I was sitting there in that, during that time and thinking to myself, well, what is success really? Because I think at the time too, I think that I listen, all of us are aware that most of the world sees success today as fame and fortune and whatever it is. But I realized, like, man, I really want to be more and more like my grandfather. I know that that's a priority. And so all that being said, going back to this process, I think making sure, I think most of the time when we think about our priorities, our biggest goals, we think about what am I going to accomplish? Will I get a rate? Like, can I move up in my career? Can I get more followers on social media? Can I make more money? Can I get more freedom? Those things. But when I thought about my grandfather and I thought about like the great life he lived, I didn't think about what he accomplished. I thought about who he had become. I mean, he was incredibly generous, incredibly loving, would put his life on the line for anybody. And I thought, that's success. It's not what I accomplished, it's who I become. And so that's one of the things I realized. And I started thinking more about how do I prioritize being an awesome husband, being a great father, being a great leader in my business, being more purpose driven and inspiring others to do more with their lives. And so before I visualize, and I encourage people to do this, prioritize. What are the most important areas of your life? I realized for me, it was my faith, my relationship with God. I realized it was my family as a husband and father. I realized it was my health. And then I realized it was my work and career of being mission and purpose driven in that career, doing things that mattered. And then I went and visualized, okay, well, what does it look like to be very spiritually connected to the divine? What does it look like for me to be a great dad? And I really pictured that. And then then I visualized those things. And then I went and set my goals based off of that. And then I went to the process of really that visualization process to, or visualize to strategize. So as you talk about, and it's so important, and I don't think enough people do this, Rebecca. I know this is why, again, I know you teach a lot of this, but like you really need to have a strategy in order to achieve the best results. I see this in the health field. So people will say something, I'll give you an example. If somebody has hypothyroidism, they may say to themselves, well, I need to maybe have less stress or eat healthier. Or most of the time, actually, what happens is their doctor tells them you have to live with this the rest of your life. So they don't do anything. So they just kind of give up on strategy. But some of them might say, well, I know I also need to lose 20 pounds. And so they'll say, well, I'm just going to try and be a little healthier. I'm going to follow this one fad diet for a while and then fall off of it versus saying, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what I'm going to try and eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner very specifically. I'm going to work with a physician or a meal planner in order to help me do that. I'm going to write down what are the 5 best supplements I can take. I'm going to start an exercise program that I think I can actually follow, which is exercising 2 days a week, going to the gym, and then I'm just going to walk every other day. So whatever it is, and then building up, emotional health. And so what I found is that when you really have a very specific strategy, a protocol, a plan, your chance of turning that visualization or realization goes up dramatically. And then one of the best ways to achieve this is go from that visualize, strategize to then systematize. And the systems are your daily habits. What are those habits you can every day to lose the 20 pounds? What are those habits every day you can do to grow spiritually and be connected to the divine or to grow your character? And so for myself, just to give an example, one of my systems is I do a spiritual triathlon every morning. I spend 10 minutes. I just go out for a quick walk of just gratitude and praise, say everything I'm grateful for. I then come inside and I crack open my Bible or a spiritual growth book or something like that, and I'll just read. And then I'll spend some time in sort of meditation and prayer but that 30 minutes in the morning of doing that spiritual triathlon, that habit has changed my life. I've been doing that since college, so over 20 years now. I've been doing that practice. And so it's been so powerful. So, but whatever it is for you, but you want to create those daily systems, those things that are in your schedule that happen on a regular basis. And if you can do that, you're going to realize the best results possible. And so that's one of the things. And if people want to learn how to do that, I have a great graphic in the book. You can check out, again, my new book, Think This, Not That. And by the way, if people go to joshax.com, I also have a mindset masterclass, have a free workbook. So you can actually do the workbook on how to do all this yourself as well. But I think that process is really powerful.
Oh, I love that. And definitely go to his website and check that out because it's so, what a great idea. Great idea. So, prioritize, visualize, systematize. And you did all of this and you wrote this book while you were flat on your back
Yeah.
and had this you had every excuse to go, "Ah, I don't want to have to do anything right now. I am just feeling awful."
Yeah.
And but you chose to pivot and
That's
say,
right.
I'm going to take this and make this um, an opportunity for myself. And one of the things that you talk about is finding your purpose
Yeah.
and using the pain that you have and turning it into your purpose in life. And really, when you and I talk about this too, and I really love how you articulate this because the way you articulate this, and I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and things, so I want to get this opportunity for you to talk about this too, is because you talk about this so eloquently, is how you can turn your pain or your traumas into transformation, your pain, and turn it into purpose. And really, once you do that, it really taps into, I think, what is what we are all here for, and how um I think it elevates you into what I believe is our soul's alignment with the
Yeah.
divine. And I think transforms us more than anything. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to. I actually had somebody who stopped over and saw me, a friend, and they asked me what I'd been up to. And I said, I'm writing a book and I'm running these businesses and I'm trying to still be a great dad and all these things. And they said, wow, if I were in your shoes, I'd be just drinking Mountain Dew and eating Cheetos all day. And I said, well, you know what? I said, the reason why I feel like I'm still able to do this, even though this is a really difficult time emotionally and mentally, is because I have so much purpose. And there's a study done, Rebecca, survey, and they interviewed people on purpose, and they found in the study that only 25% of people clearly know what their purpose is, and less people than that are actually feel like they're walking out their full purpose. And so, purpose is really very important. When I was going through this spinal infection, again, it got into my bone. I had an abscess, and I there were certain emotions I never experienced before, and I can say that because throughout my life, I mean, I'd been pretty healthy. I mean, before I had this happen, I was, yeah, running and swimming and deadlifting and squat. I mean, I was in great shape. And so when I was told by a doctor I may never walk again, I thought to myself, it was the first time I'd ever felt the emotion of despair and hopelessness. I
Mm,
never even felt those before.
mhm,
Actually, even anxiety. Like, I'm a really sort of calm, collected person, but I had felt this overwhelming sense of despair for about 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, after one day of it, I thought, this is not serving me. This isn't good. And I
mhm.
said, I need to really focus back in and tie to my purpose. My purpose is not to simply suffer through this. My purpose is to help others in this process and use this for good.
Yeah,
And
I
so
call that victim mode,
that's
being
right.
in victim mode. Because I was there
Yeah.
too for a little while when I was dealing with a narcissistic business partner. And I realized that when I was on vacation with my family, and my daughter leaned over and said, "Oh, this is heaven on earth," when we were at Mount Haleakala and looking at sunrise. And I was like, "Yeah, it is." And then I realized I was thinking about that narcissistic business partner, and I thought, "Oh God, you don't get to be here." No,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm allowing myself to be a victim, and that was when I pivoted. And so I think of that as like victim mode, and
Yeah.
taking that and realizing, no, this is not okay. And
Eh,
and so when you can shift, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because, I have this high conflict certification now, and, just giving people opportunities to take their pain and pivot. And so I want you to just,
y-
I interrupted you, but I wanted you to just,
yeah.
because it's like that shifting from victim to victor mode, right? And making that
Yes.
shift in your, because when you decide, it's like that moment of decision, you're cutting off any other possibilities. Because, the root of the word decide is actually side. It's to kill, it's to cut off.
Mm.
And so you're literally cutting off any other possibilities from it's like the universe, then God lines up for you and says, oh, okay, this is it. And so I talk about that with my community a lot. And I want to just mention that because you made that decision in that 24-hour period. You were like, no, I'm in victim mode, and no, this is not me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And one of the things I did, Rebecca, is I sort of visualized two paths. And this is one of the things I did. I thought, if I keep going down this rabbit hole of what's the worst case scenario and reading on Google and all these things, uh, what's my best case scenario if I do that for the next year? And I thought, well, and what if I just live in victim mode? So I'm going to eat more unhealthy. I'm going to continue to read bad stuff. I'm going to feel bad about myself. And I know neuroplasticity, my chances of healing are going down dramatically. Versus if I believe for the best possible outcome and I still try and be the best dad and father, if I write a book and I take this pain and turn it into purpose and do all these things, which is a better path? And it's obvious. We all know this. Like being the victor instead of the victim, that is the better path by 100-fold. You're going to be in a much better position. And so I decided to do that. And, and by the way, I'd done this earlier in my career. When my mom had cancer, I was in junior high. And I remember my mom going through chemotherapy, losing all of her hair. I remember her taking a comb through her hair and all of it coming out. I remember her looking like she'd aged 20 years in 2 weeks and saying to myself two things. One, I never want to see anyone have to suffer like this again. And number two, there has to be a better way to help people heal. And God used that scenario of my mom overcoming that conventional method and then being diagnosed again and us using natural method in order for me to become a doctor of functional medicine and really study these. And my mom said this the other day. I was with my mom and she said, you know what? I wouldn't take away my experience with cancer because it brought me closer to your father. I'm more grateful every day that I'm even alive. Every day is a gift. And so, it's I think that for myself, I had used into it the purpose thing and finish out this example as well. Is I did tap into purpose and I wrote this book in order to help people break through. Like I needed a health breakthrough. And I wrote that book going through how do you experience a breakthrough in your health? How do you overcome limiting beliefs? How do you find your purpose? How do you build a rock solid identity? How do you become more resilient? And really mindset medicine rather than giving people food as medicine. This is medicine for the mind. And so I did the book. One of the things I talk about in the book is you need to attach the highest level of meaning to your identity as possible. By the way, you get your purpose, you find your purpose by first identifying by finding your identity. And today, when you look in the world around us, people have a lot of identity confusion. This is one of the biggest issues related to mental health. When you look at the stats, heart disease and cancer and diabetes, yes, they've continued to rise. But over the past 10 years, mental health disorders have far, far exceeded that, especially in Gen Z and millennials. I mean, by far, but it's Gen X and baby boomers as well. And so all that being said, here I want to give you examples of father, like in terms of what I mean by increasing your level of purpose. And it's this thought at first. One is some people believe that everything you do, it doesn't really matter. Okay, like we're here temporarily, there's no eternity, and so it doesn't matter what happens in your life. A lot of people believe that. It might sound very it's a lot of people that are nihilistic or some atheists, like that's what they would believe. Now, there's also people who believe that literally every moment matters. that everything you do has eternal significance. So you have the very lowest and the very highest levels of purpose. And so with me as a father, I could think, well, my role as a father is simply to, impregnate a woman. And that's it. That makes me a father. That's a very low, and I don't need to be there for them. I can run off and do what I want the rest of my life. That's a very low level of purpose and meaning. We could go up a level and say, okay, my role as a father is to provide for my family. Okay, in the traditional sense, it's to provide for my family. That's a big step up. You're showing up, you're doing something meaningful, providing, but let's go another step up. And I could go more steps, but just an example of a top tier. Like for me, my role as a father, my identity is I am called to be the best dad ever and create world-changing kids that are high in character. I'm called to find my kids' unique gifts and talents and skills and help them take those to the moon in order to make the world a better place. I'm called to help, instill with them a relationship with God and think about eternity. And not only am I impacting them, but that's impacting their kids and their kids and their kids. And so I believe that my role as a father is divine and meaningful and will impact eternity. So my point there is that because I believed that my identity is as a child of God and as a divine being, along with every other human being being divine to live and impact eternity, like that gives my life so much purpose. It means everything that I do is meaningful and matters. And so when you believe that what you do doesn't matter versus when you believe everything you do matters significantly and eternally, it just really changes the way you operate and you live. And there's a chapter in the book, and when my literary agent read that chapter, she said, this is one of the best chapters I've ever read in any book, because she said, she said, people talk about identity all the time. I've never really read anything that's allowed me to actually understand what identity is and how to build a rock solid, strong identity. And she said, you were able to do that. And one of the ways, I'm just going to hit on part of it, but I'd encourage everybody to check out the book and go through it in this chapter 7. On identity, but this book really goes through what your identity is. It's your roles, your responsibilities, and the meaning you attach to those things. And there's a quote by C.S. Lewis, and he says this: the people that do the most in this life are the people that think most about the next life. Think about Mother Teresa. She did so much in this life. She was thinking about the next life. When you read Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches, he's constantly saying, I see the promised land. He has this eternal vision and this vision for even hundreds of years from now of what the world will be like when racism is gone. And so all that being said, I think it's so important that we tap into our purpose, our identity, which then will fuel our purpose. But you've got to know that your life is meaningful. You've got to know that it matters. And you do that by recognizing when you grow in character, it matters the most. And when you take your unique gift and skill, what is that thing that God's equipped you with that you can be the best in the world at? Is it writing? Is it being a teacher? Is it being a mother or a father? What are those things? And focus on continually growing your skill in that and impacting and contributing to the world in that way. But I really outline and kind of walk through exactly how to do that in the book. But I do think it's so important for people. Think about this. 25% of people know what their purpose is. Only 25. And less than that are walking it out. So that's going to lead to a lot of people having mental health issues and being depressed and just not feeling like they're living their best life.
I'm surprised it's even that high. I know it's one of the most searched phrases on the internet still. So, okay. So let's just make sure we go back through what the steps are again. Prioritize, then visualize. Go ahead.
It's prioritize, visualize, strategize, systematize, and then you'll realize the results. And once you start realizing those results, then you can shift and pivot and kind of go back around to the start of reprioritize. But those are some of those steps.
I love it. And okay. And where can they find the book? Where can they follow you? And you mentioned a course and all of that. Just go back through and make sure everybody hears it all again.
Yeah. And Rebecca, can I share one last story?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Now, this is something I think that a lot of people will resonate with, because I think all of us have had people say things to us, and whether it was a relationship with a parent or a teacher or a coach or a pastor, whatever it is. But one of the things we really talk about in the book is overcoming your limiting beliefs. And when I was in high school, freshman in high school, I was taking English, English 101 in high school. And I had a teacher ask me to stay afterwards. Her name was Mrs. Noble. And I stayed after class, and she said, Josh, what do you want to do when you know, what do you want to do after high school? I said, well, actually, I want to go to college, and then I want to become a doctor. And she actually laughed at me out loud, and she said, listen, with your grades, you have no chance. She said, my daughter has a 3.8 GPA, and she could barely get into med school at Ohio State. And she says, I think with your grades, you're going to have a hard time getting into college. And she said, listen, you got an F on this paper. You're getting a D- in the class. You need to do better. And I walked out of there and I thought, oh, wow. My dreams of being a doctor were shattered. I thought, and by the way, the year before was when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So I really had it on my heart. Like I really wanted to be able to be a doctor and help people. And then, I got my first report card. It was so bad. And so my mom brought me to the doctor. And then I was in there and I got diagnosed with ADHD. And then the doctor was talking about me like I wasn't there, saying I was really going to struggle in school. And I thought about this, and he said, here's a medication. And I thought, wow, not only am I not smart, but I'm like medically not smart. I got to take a medication. Like, there's something wrong with me. And so throughout high school, I just stopped trying. Like I did graduate high school with a C- GPA, like low 2 point something. And I basically just got good grades so my to keep my dad from getting irate. And but then I applied to college, didn't think I would get in, and I didn't get in, but they sent me a letter back and they said, we started a new program of summer school. If you go to summer school and get above a 3.0, we'll let you into this college. And I thought, well, I don't want to be the kid that doesn't go, stays home. I want to go off to college. And so I went and took summer classes. And wouldn't you know it, the two classes I had to take first in summer school were History 101 and English 101. And so I took English 101, and one of the first things was write a paper. And I wrote a paper, and I thought, I'm really going to try. Because again, I don't want to not be able to go to college. And so I went and I really tried, and I handed in my paper. And a few days later, the teacher, her name was Miss Williams, she said, Josh, could you stay after? And I thought, oh no, like this isn't good. And she said, hey, she said, what's your major? And I said, well, I haven't picked a major yet. She said, well, I want to let you know, you got the highest grade in the class and you're a great writer. She said, have you ever thought about being an English major or get into journalism? And I thought, and I just said to her, I said, no. I said, and she said, okay, well, you should think about it. I said, okay, thank you. And I literally had I'll call it like a mindset or a memory transplant. Like I literally had a transplant because I had this memory living in my head in this narrative that was literally on repeat saying, you're not smart, you're not smart, you're not smart. And then finally I had a teacher tell me, you're a great writer, you're capable, you've got potential. And I took this one memory and mindset and I literally removed it like a diseased organ and put in this new memory like a new organ. And it changed the rest of my life. I decided from that point on, I averaged above, well above a 3.0 in college. I went to Johns Hopkins, graduated there with a 3.9 GPA.
Wow.
And then I've written over 10 books. I've started a company done over $100 million a year. And more than that, like I love who I've been able to become and grow into. And all that being said, I think for a lot of people, Rebecca, they are one limiting belief away from transforming their life. Like if I would have held on to that one single limiting belief, I wouldn't have even tried to, become a doctor or write these books or do these things. And so I just want to encourage everybody with that. Listen, it just takes one shift. If you can have one mental shift, one change in your belief, you can restore that relationship. You can break through in your health. You can build that business you've always wanted to. You could write that book, but you can experience a breakthrough in your life. And so that's really a huge part of what my book's about. And we get into that very early in chapter 1 of here's exactly how to identify your biggest limiting beliefs. Here's the strategy based on psychology to break through it in a very easy, practical way. And so I really hope everybody checks out the book. It's called Think This, Not That. It's available on Amazon, bookstores nationwide. Also, if you go to joshaxe.com, that's JOSHAXE.com, I actually am giving away $500 worth of free content if you just buy the book there. And so I have a master class on mindset you get for free. I have cards that help you build your mindset. that you can download. We also have a workbook so you can do all of the exercises to overcome limiting beliefs and be more successful and those things in your life. And so I hope everybody checks out the book there, because I believe it's a book that's going to help you experience a breakthrough and change your life. And Rebecca, I want to say, hey, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I love so much what you do. And hey, I want to encourage everybody, check out the podcast I did with Rebecca. She was sharing so much wisdom on my podcast. And so anyways, that was really a fantastic podcast. We've got such great feedback on. So thanks so much.
Well, but the one of the opening lines of my podcast is sometimes the very first negotiation that you have to do in the morning is with your own self for your own self-worth. And, that is one of the things that you said that you had to overcome. And, I want to know, do you agree with that? What do you think about mindset when it comes to negotiation or dealing with your day?
Man, mindset's been, I agree with it 100%. I am a small town kid, and I think that sometimes growing up in a small town can make you small-minded. I think that sometimes growing up in a small town, I encourage people these days. I say, just because you have a small YouTube channel, you still need to dream big. But that's hard because sometimes your circumstances don't fully align with your vision, but your circumstances can make you think smaller. They can constrain your life. So how do you expand your mindset? There's been some influential things along the way, different mentors. Early on, there was a guy named Dr. Dave Martin. I did kind of a millionaire mindset program and actually incredibly helpful, and sometimes I think even that can get criticism. Because people go, okay, can you really think and grow rich? And you're like, well, technically, no, because you do actually have to execute, but officially, absolutely, because it's going to have to start with your thinking. So if you can change your thinking, you could truly change your life. And so there was some early stuff. I think one of the other big things for me was I discovered a book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning. And I started to change my mornings, realizing that if you can slay the morning, you could slay all day. And if you can wake up, I've heard some people call it a prize fighter's morning routine. And I have absolutely learned. I think that some of maybe my fans or people who watch our content maybe doubt that I deal with insecurity, self-doubt, negative thinking, discouragement, depression at times, and that sometimes it's a daily battle, and that waking up, having practices to get into the right state, the right mindset, but the right emotional state are essential. As a person of faith, there's a verse that says David encouraged himself in the Lord. And so there is something about learning how to encourage yourself, how to shift your perspective, shift your mindset. And Hal teaches in that book, he just collected practices like scribing, journaling, meditation, silence, reading, a little bit of movement and breathing, not intense exercise, but a little bit of exercise. And so I've adapted a lot of those things. And then there's another book called The Big Leap that talks about the upper limit, and that we will hit. Our mindset can also be like a thermostat, right? Where or our environment around us. It's like the lottery winner, that you won the millions of dollars, but you didn't change your mindset, your belief system, your operating system. And so you found your way back to being broke again because you hit an upper limit, your money limitations, your self-worth limitations. You didn't know how to steward it. You didn't know how to manage it. So my awareness of discovering some of these signposts along the way, and then the implementation of trying to not just one time, in a way, reinventing myself, but having to continually do it. And now every year in our company, thank God, it's kind of like mo money, mo problems. And it's nice. It's a nice problem to have, but there's whole new limits. Like, what does it mean to actually now, what leader do I need to be for a team of this size? What kind of leader do I need to be to run a team of this size? And also now be a father of a 3-year-old or 1-year-old? What kind of husband do I need to be? And even as we speak, dealing with stuff that I'm seeing coming up, and my wife and I are in counseling and dealing with stuff where I'm realizing as now I'm having kids, and stuff starts coming out of maybe from my childhood that I didn't even realize. So I agree with you. I think it's a constant work in progress. The Jim Rohn may have been famous for saying the quote of something like, working on doing well at your job will make a living, but like working on yourself make a fortune. Personal develop, I don't know, self development. And so I've always been a big investor in self development and things that can build up my mindset, negotiate with myself, and get my mind right. A lot of days it starts wrong, so I'll go through a practice to kind of get into the right place. Think about what meetings I have ahead, and that's what leaders do.
Oh, so much gold in what you just said. So much gold. I was like trying to take notes on the books and things that you were talking about. I always say that I have so much respect for what you just said about you and your wife, because I always say that in every relationship, whether it's you and your spouse or anybody that you're with, that there's always 4 people in a relationship. And that is your true selves, you and the other person's true self, which is the one from God, which is the one that was created by God, which is perfect and whole and from love, right? And then there's the trauma selves, right? And so there's the 4 people really. And it's in any given moment, there's who's going to show up in that relationship, who's going to speak, who's going to dominate, who's going to respond, who's going to act, who's going to interact, who's going to react. And then, when that happens, then that other person also has that, in that gap after that other person has spoken, there's that moment of how is that other person going to respond and who's going to show up? Is it going to be that true self, the one that was, created by God, or is it going to be the trauma self? Because the trauma self wants to go, I'm going to say something hurtful and I'm going to, right? Because the trauma self was created in a moment of childhood to protect and defend and survive, and says things that are hurtful and never usually does things that are really good for anybody. But, and at the end of the day, they think that they're protecting. And by the time, you're an adult, you have to look and you have to acknowledge that trauma self and say, thank you. Thank you for your service. But I appreciate you, but I don't think I need you anymore. And you're not helping me anymore.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. And I know I'm 40 years old, but you start realizing, man, we're a work in progress. But that's my wife and I are very passionate about counseling. We've done it over the years. We've gone years without it. But I'm a big believer in, in athletics and in sports. Not all amateurs have coaches, but all professionals do. And the highest level athletes have multiple coaches. Yeah. So thinking about if we want to have a world-class marriage, and we're in business together. So we co-own the business and we're running it as it grows and gets complex, and you deal with other personalities and all this different stuff. And we have different gift sets. So it adds a whole nother layer of pressure and challenges to navigate. And you add in running a business together, and you then add in the kids, and then you add in your trauma selves. And so we need coaches.
My husband and I used to have our law practice together, and it was like you could never get away from work either.
Sure.
You're at your anniversary dinner and you're talking about work stuff.
That is exactly. We actually at my birthday just the two of us at Bellagio. We went to the Sphere in Las Vegas, went to some nice meals, and ended up having, among other many magical and memorable moments, also a couple long conversations about like our event next year and our speakers. And
yeah, and it's like, okay, we got to not do this, right? You can't be talking about clients or whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, it can be that way. All right, so let's dive in. Free content right here. 7 ways that narcissists use tricks on your mind that actually do work on you, unless you know. All right, so what do? The first thing they do, and this kind of starts off in the love bombing phase, by the way, the phase where they're trying to draw you in because they need their narcissistic supply, right? They need that supply because that's what they're looking for, which is anything to feed their ego. And that's all about that. And remember, when you're building strategy, when you're building leverage against them, you got to like keep all of this in mind. And you can't use regular negotiation tactics when you're dealing with narcissists. They don't work. All right. So when you're dealing with them, you got to remember, okay, they start off with love bombing. It's one of the things that they start off with is this whole like mirroring thing, which works actually in regular negotiation with normal people. But the reason why they do this is because they do know that this sort of works. So what they do is they kind of subtly copy you. They subtly sort of mimic you. They subtly mirror you. I dealt with 2 covert narcissists in my life who targeted me, which was pretty awful. And they both did this. They both sort of copied me. And so they mirror you. They copy what you're doing. And they try to subtly mirror your body language and all of that because they want to seem similar to you. It's a mind game that actually works at the beginning because they want to seem perfect for you. They're very good at reading people. They're very good at studying people. All right. So that's number 1, just so you know. And it's something that you can do back too, by the way, when you are negotiating with them. I talk about ethically manipulating the manipulator, something that you can do too. All right. So that's number 1. Number 2, one of the things that some of them do is they play the victim. Some of them will really have this thing where you can seriously play the violin, where they'll find a way that they can blame every bad thing that's ever happened in the world on what's happened to them, like, oh, this awful thing. And so they will definitely play the victim, or, they're so sick all the time, or they're this or they're that, so that they can play the victim, right? So that's number 2. Number 3, I definitely wanted to get to this one because the passive aggressive game. This is a big favorite of the covert narcissist. And if you want to know more about covert narcissism in relationships, I do have a whole video on this. I did have to deal with a covert narcissist myself, or a couple of them. And they're really, really underhanded. And in some ways, I think the worst of them because you really don't spot them right away. So definitely check out my video on that. They use gaslighting. They forget things. They don't follow through. It's very hard to pin down that it was back to them. The underhanded sabotage, very, like I said, passive aggressive. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, I didn't mean to. I thought you meant this. Oh, I was going to. That sort of thing. And it's pretty awful. So that's the passive aggressive game. That's number 3. Number 4 is the silent treatment game. This is also a very common game that narcissists will play. It's easy for them. All they have to do is just act like nothing happened. They ignore certain things. They respond only to what they want to respond to. They'll respond to certain text messages, for example. They ignore other text messages. And again, this could actually be in conjunction with the passive aggressive, by the way. Oh, I didn't see that message. I meant to respond to that one. Oh, I didn't mean to not respond to that one. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't get that text. That sort of thing. So that's number 4. Number 5 is the withhold game, where they just withhold certain information from you. I had to deal with this with the business partner that I was dealing with, where I would find out that she knew certain things, had information on better things. It just was very frustrating, very maddening, not telling you that they received information, not telling you that they talked to people. It's very, very frustrating. Number 6 is the flying monkey game, another mind game that they play, where they will line up third parties against you to make it seem like you are the crazy one, to make it seem like that other people are believing their lies, to make it seem like you're very isolated, to make it seem like you don't have any friends, or that there's this army of people ganging up against you, like that you're being bullied. It's like you lose your footing, you lose your way, and you really lose a sense of yourself, and it starts to steal your soul after a while because of these flying monkeys. So that's number 6. And number 7 is the guilt game. This can happen in a number of different ways. Guilt for not spending enough time with you. They play on your vulnerabilities, playing the woe is me game, a whole lot of different ways. And this, again, can also be in conjunction with the victim game, or the passive aggressive game, or the withhold game. And there's a number of different ways that this could go, but all part of the mind games that they can play. What I love about you is how you just sort of see things in a different way. I want you to talk about that, because I understand that mentality, but I want you to articulate it as well.
Yeah, and I think that it wasn't necessarily something I realized that I did until more recently. But first of all, yeah, I have been in toxic situations, and I think no matter, unfortunately in life, there are people out there who are toxic, and odds are you are going to run into them at some point. And all we can do is protect ourselves as much as possible, be aware of it, and then move out of those situations. But I think one of the things, whether it's a situation from other people or the situation that I was in, like as a chiropractor, I put myself in that position. I really understood from a very early age that if I embodied the victim mentality in these situations, then I was actually depowering myself. I was actually taking away the power from myself, because when you're a victim, something is being done to you that you can't do anything about. And so I realized that if I said, this is happening to me, like they always win, or X, Y, and Z, I wasn't allowing myself to be able to solve the problem, versus being able to say, okay, this sucks, they're mean, they're X, Y, Z, this whole thing is like this, but these are the options that I have. And so I always have taken the stance in my life to create, to look for, shall I say, the doors, or create the doors. I think you can look at it 2 ways. Sometimes if you tell yourself that you are powerless, that you have, that they have all the power and that you don't even look for doors, or you close the doors before, you've even tried to open them. And so I've really maintained a mindset in my life, which is like, there is always a door. And if there's not a door, I'll kick the door down and create one. Like, I'm going to find a door. And so I think that mentality for me has really allowed me to, create, number one, like a life that I'm really fortunate and really love and feel very blessed to have. And number 2, has allowed me to move out of toxic situations, has allowed me to move and allow people maybe I don't want in my life to exit and allow new people to come in. But I think if I had told myself that that wasn't possible for me, I would still probably be a chiropractor back in the UK right now. I don't think that I'm special. I don't think that I am any smarter, more skilled, or any which way of anyone else listening to this. I just think I was determined to be like, okay, these are the skill sets that I need, or these are the things that I need to create. Okay, so let's go and create them. Or if I'm not good at this, let me learn to be good at it. If I can't do this, let me figure it out. Or, you know, if I'm not the person, then who is the person? And just always being in that like problem solving mind, that there isn't really a challenge that I can't overcome. The only challenges, actually, I always say this quote to myself, which is like, you can't fail if you don't quit. And so I think in life, if you are not able to keep, most people will give up. Most people will be like surrender, like, oh yeah, like, or the victim mentality, like, oh, I can't possibly do that. Like, it's okay for them. It's not okay for me, whatever. And what that does is actually keeps them in that position, versus like, if you keep trying, and none of us are great at it the first time, like it's just like watching a child walk. We don't say to a child like, hey, you fell over twice now, like don't bother trying to learn to walk. We're like, okay, get going again. We're not judging a child on how long it takes them to walk. Some walk at 9 months, some walk at 18 months. Like, we're not looking at that mentality. So why do we do that to ourselves? Why do we take ourselves, like, stop ourselves experiencing and learning, so that, hey, you might have been in a toxic situation before, you might have struggled to get out of it so far, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow is going to be the same as yesterday. It doesn't mean a month from now is going to be the same, because you're learning and developing with every skill set. Like, every tumble you take, your ability to get back up again and learn from that is what will create that change in your life and the circumstances that you're in. So the biggest thing that you have to work on is like your mental ability to keep going when most people will give up. And that's where, you know, I've been so fortunate to interview a lot of successful people, and interview a lot of people that I know I'm deeming successful by actually their happiness. I've interviewed people who are wealthy. I wouldn't say they're successful because they're miserable, and I don't think that's like the life I want personally. But I've also met people who are really successful and they're happy with their life and they're at peace and they're content. And I would say that's one of the traits that I've noticed the most about them, is that they're always learners. They're always like, okay, well, I'll figure it out, and giving themselves the control and the power back, that if you give to someone else, you're always going to stay stuck. Whereas if you hold that power into yourself, like, okay, I might not know, but I will find out, or I might fail, but I'm not going to fail because I'm going to keep trying. Like, that really allows you to create a lot of change, and very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Everything you just said is exactly right. You know, it's like, and there's just such a different mindset, you know, and one of the things that I've learned about the brain is that the brain is wired for safety. The brain is wired for safety. The brain is not wired for success. So we actually have to rewire our brain for success. And so, but sometimes I think certain people, their brains have just sort of come pre-wired a little bit differently. And I think entrepreneurs are that way. I don't know, because I think I've always been sort of pre-wired that way. And I think, you know, it sounds like you have too. And I know, like, for me, I built my law practice, and I thought that was the mountain. Like, I thought that was the thing. Excuse me. It's like, once I hit it, I was like, okay, here I am. And then I didn't like the hamster wheel phase of it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was like, oh, okay, now all the business is coming. And I always say I built it and then it ate me. Cause like, I was like, all right, now here I am, but I want more. Like, I want the creation piece of it.
Yeah.
Right. But then you always end up with these naysayers, because, like, I think for me, people were like, why would she leave? Why would she leave that law practice? You know, it was like so booming, and I didn't even have to step outside of my office. I had all the top clients in town wanted to hire me or whatever. People thought I had cancer, you know, what was going on, you know. And even when I started law school, by the way, when I went back to law school, I had these 3 little babies, because I got married at 19 the first time, and I had 3 kids by the time I was 23. And I went back to law school. I was still in my 20s when I went back to law school as a single mom. At night, people were like, oh, why would you do that? You're crazy. everybody who's graduating from law school is like bagging groceries nowadays. There's too many lawyers. And I was like, well, somebody's going to get a job. Why wouldn't it be me? I mean, and so I think that there's always naysayers. Like, I'm sure when you left being a chiropractor, people were like, why would you leave the safety of being a chiropractor? That's crazy. Right. I think, shutting off the naysayers is part of it too. Right.
100%. So many people told me not to do it because there I was sat with a vocational degree, which gave me a really good, solid salary. And so people were like, why are you doing that? And I remember my boss at the time when I was like telling him, because I was like a partner in it. So kind of a little bit like a law firm in a way. So I had to tell them like, hey, I'm leaving. I've set up this business, etc. And he was like, I'm really worried about you. I just think you're just so ambitious and like this won't be a success. And I was just like, that's really interesting. But I think like you have to really protect yourself from those people, but also from those stories. Like you get to choose which stories you tell yourself. And those stories of the naysayers are just their limiting beliefs. They either have it that it's actually their fears that they couldn't possibly do it, or then you do get people who just want you to stay the same. I remember I was like chatting to an old boyfriend. This was like some years ago. I was like chatting to him online and he was like, you've really changed. And I was like, dude, it's been 15 years. I should hope I have changed. Like, we're in trouble if we've not changed in 15 years. And I think just really owning, like, your self-belief, and no one is going to believe in you as much as you can believe in yourself. And so if you don't learn and you don't learn the skill sets, and this is what I just want to get across, all of this is learned. Like you choose to decide, okay, maybe you don't have great self-belief right now. I'm going to choose to learn the practices that will help me have better self-belief. Like I've done things like I went to Hoffman, like it was like 6 days where you talk about like inner child and like some of the limiting beliefs that you have and come back to like who your core essence is and like what really lights you up. And so like really not acknowledging like you can invest in your own, like you can invest in your own transformation, you can invest in your own mindset. And I think again it just comes back to like I was never willing for anyone to take that away from me. Like you might be able to tell me that I can't do something like now, but you can't tell me like, okay, you're never going to be able to do that, right? I fully accept like in this position right now, could I don't know, let's say, could I swim, as fast as XYZ or do 100 meters and whatever? No, I couldn't. But if I trained, I might even get there, but I could get closer. And it's the same thing, like wherever you're at in business, yes, transitions are hard, but they're still doable. And you just said something that I also realized. I actually wasn't a born entrepreneur. I like just knew I had to work. That was it. I was like a workhorse. Like I had 4 jobs at the age of like 14. And I would say also my life was very like, I grew up in a little village in the UK. It was like it was very comfortable. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. And so my thermostat on life, I would say like, and I always equate this to like temperature. I was literally in like California weather. So it was like 70 degrees like all year round, right? It was just nice. And I realized that when I met my partner, he is from Trinidad and he grew up with like no running water at times. There would be like shootings in his backyard. Like it was just completely different. And so he also didn't know he didn't have anything. And he grew up with so much love, so much laughter. So he had this polarity in his temperature. So his temperature range would go from like 40 degrees, 30 degrees to that whole 80 degrees, right? And so I realized he had such a huge range of temperature that he was able to be resilient at. So one thing that I really realized as I went into business and when I went through these changes was like, okay, my temperature is really, really like where I'm comfortable is in such a really like narrow situation. How do I expand upon that? And how do I expose myself? And how do I learn? Like, okay, this is actually testing me. Like this situation right now is just me increasing my thermostat's range. And so
Mm.
when I started looking at opportunities or challenges that I was having in my life, whether it was people, whether it was financial situations, whether it was trying to even get my visa to move to the US, which for anyone who's immigrated knows that's really hard. I was like, oh, this is my test at 40 degrees. Like I'm getting used to having these. And so being able to see that 40 degrees isn't bad. You just need to dress for 40 degrees. You just need a different set of clothing. You just need, there's still beautiful scenery at 40 degrees. There's like all these amazing things that you can do. Likewise, 80 degrees is going to feel too hot, or 85 degrees is going to feel too hot. But if you have a pina colada in your hand and you buy a swimming pool, it feels amazing. And so looking at my life, like, okay, how can I always get in situations where I'm better equipped for that situation, better equipped for that temperature? That has really been like a metaphor that's helped me go, okay, I feel really uncomfortable now. What can I do? How can I be prepared for this temperature range? Like, who do I need around me? What mental work do I need to do? What physical work do I need to do so that I can withstand being at this temperature for a longer period of time than I was planning to be? I hope this is making sense. I'm a bit of a thing. I have a thing for metaphors.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, I thought you were going to go a different place with the thermostat thing, because I've actually heard it in a different way, but I love that. I love that metaphor. I love that metaphor. I've heard it in a different way, more like as far as success goes.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like you're used to having success at a certain place. And then when you start to try to move your success up, you actually start to feel imposter syndrome.
yeah,
And
it's true too.
so, yeah. And so you kind of almost push yourself back to your thermostat comfort level,
Yeah,
because it's like uncomfortable for you to get to like the warmer temperatures. And so you almost like go back to like your 70-degree level, because it doesn't feel comfortable for you to be at 85 degrees or whatever. And
100%. I can totally see how that works too. It's like
yeah,
getting comfortable being uncomfortable too, right?
yeah,
So like, oh yeah, you have to like reclimatize. I
yeah,
guess that's kind of like the theme between both of them. It's like being your ability to reclimatize at
yeah,
different temperatures is really where you kind of like own that power still versus like giving it away. If we take it back to that victimhood, it's like, no, how do I, yes, this is uncomfortable right now, either having this success. So how do I get the people or the things to support me so I don't go backwards? Or likewise, if you want to move into it, like what do you like, how do you get in those situations to, feel more comfortable?
yes, exactly. Because I know for me, I have had that with my business situation. Like the more success, it's like, oh my God, you almost sort of like go, do I deserve this? What's happening? And then you start to get, okay, yes, I do. You know what I mean? It's almost
Mhm.
like a little bit, I know I had that with my law firm, and then again with this online business, because it all in both situations for me, it happened really quickly, because
Yeah.
I was like a teacher for a brief period of time, and then I went back to law school, and then my law firm took off really, really quickly, and then this online business took off really quickly too. And then so in both situations I had to reclimatize, as you said.
Yeah.
And and so in both situations for me, I had to deal with like sort of the imposter syndrome situation.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I feel like I've done a few like conversations on imposter syndrome before because I'm exactly the same. Like I've suffered so much from it. And even when we first started building Boss Babe, like I used to hide so much behind the scenes because I had such imposter syndrome about it. Or I wouldn't even post on social media. And I'd be like, what does people think I want? What do people want to know from me? And like all of these stories. So I totally relate to that. And I think, just understanding yourself and sometimes imposter syndrome it really comes down to like not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy. That's honestly why I did Hoffman. Like that's actually why I went to Hoffman, because I was like, oh, how do I like break through
Yeah,
some
and
of
I
my
did
like
Hoffman too, by the way.
yeah.
But I didn't do the 6-day. I did the weekend version, but it was
Oh,
still really good. Yeah. Shopify helps millions sell billions around the world through their digital courses, through their digital products, at the touch of a button, on their smartphones, on social media. however they want, including me, at shop.rebeccazung.com. You can access your store from all over the world, just a touch of a button from your smartphones. Start accepting payments. Everything you need to sell online, manage orders, and develop relationships in one place and look fabulous doing it. Shopify is the commerce platform that is revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide, including my own, at shop.rebeccazung.com. So right now, what you need to do is sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/bestlife, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/bestlife to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bestlife.